Monday Night Football is upon us, and it actually kind of looks like a fun game. Packers-Raiders tonight. Of course, $1 million up top on DraftKings and a bunch of other fun tournaments as well. So what we're going to do today is the same we do every Monday and Thursday. We are going to hand build the lineup. Then we're going to check the projections and the ownership projections on Stokastic. We will then hop over to the Fantasy Cruncher Optimizer, optimize some lineups, see what people are going to be put on based upon the data. And then last but not least, is it actually number 5? Last but not least, we actually will simulate lineups on Stokastic as well, find out which ones are jumping out, who are the highest ROI players. We will look into that in a moment. But let's start with the build here. This game, Green Bay's got 21.8 implied points. The Raiders, 23.8 implied points. Historical anomalies distract me. Pour one out for the homie AR. I mean, Derek Carr played after 1 week with an AC joint sprain, so we'll see what AR does. There'll be some MRIs today, but I'm not gonna panic about it, even though never great to see your guy go down, and really not great either to see people victory lapping on Twitter about it. So that is a quick way to make an enemy of your old pal Spags, where you're victory lapping AR being hurt. Boo, thumbs down. Shouts to chat as always. Shouts to Obi-Wan here. What's good? What's good is going to be building a lineup here. And hopefully what's good today will be Christian Watson. So this is where we're going to start with this lineup build. I think there's a spot that's very live for Jordan Love to have an outlier day. Vegas' defense on the year, not good. 0.1 EPA per dropback allowed. Of course, I always reference expected points added metrics from Sports Info Solutions because it tells you basically how much more above average a player is. What are they doing? How are they attacking downfield? What are defenses giving up? That is why EPA is so valuable. And it is a spot right now where the Raiders defense not allowing anything too much in terms of what they're doing defensively. They're able to give up a lot of production through the air. That seems like a Jordan Love spot to me. The question, though, becomes, is he worth playing at captain? Is he worth playing at a flex spot? At a $9,800 salary, I am actually going to start with playing him at captain. I've been encouraged by the rushing usage of Jordan Love, as we saw last Thursday night, where it was a really bad game for him against Detroit. A lot of pressure coming his way. Jordan Love does not handle pressure well so far at a negative 0.98 EPA on pressured plays. So he's basically giving up a point every single time that he's getting pressured. The Raiders don't get a lot of pressure, just a 17% pressure rate. They blitz at a 26% rate. They're not getting home. So that tells you they're not a great pressure team. Can they still get there for Jordan Love? Possibly. But I do think Jordan Love, he's going to sling it. It's on the thumbnail. I very much believe that Jordan Love looks really good in this spot, and he will be my captain selection, though I reserve the right to move him around as we go. Mathology, you're saying fun showdown tonight. Vegas super condensed. That is true, though. Questionable tag on Davante Adams. That could certainly change things. Got to think that Adams will go here. Jimmy Garoppolo expected back in. These games matter the most for him right now as a guy that has said he wants the Raiders to be competitive. So something to keep in mind. And it is a revenge game, even though they're playing it in Vegas, not in Green Bay. But that doesn't matter that much. We'll put Adams in, though, right away. I do believe that Adams, another player that should get some target volume here. Not as good of a matchup for Jimmy Garoppolo going against this Packers pass defense on the year. They're much weaker against the run, giving up a really bad 0.06 EPA per rush, but a negative 0.03 EPA per dropback is basically around league average. The formal average would be 0, but league average ends up being around negative 0.03, negative 0.05, somewhere there. So that is where the Packers defense is. Davante Adams, though, can beat any matchup. I don't have any issue going with him. Hard to imagine him not making a winning lineup. Obviously, you can play some amount of lineups without him. I think that's perfectly fine. But let's put Adams in for now. And let's see what happens if we put Jacobs in too. We're eating up a lot of salary right away. This is a very chalky construction to start. I do think you can make the case he could play either one or the other of Davante Adams or Josh Jacobs. But in this spot, I do expect there to be more production. I think the defenses maybe going to be a little bit overplayed due to the Vegas total. I don't think either defense can stop either offense. That is how I'm going to grade out for this game. The total doesn't say that. Total's basically about 45 implied points. It's not a lot of points in this game expected, but on turf in Vegas, two teams that have not shown a lot, willing to play on the side of there being more production than less in this game. Who we're going to stack with Jordan Love? I do think Christian Watson is live, though he did play only 26 snaps in his debut in last Thursday Night Football against the Lions. 18 routes in that game. Romeo Doubs on the year at 46.3 snaps, 29 routes. On the pure volume of routes, if Watson is still going to be somewhat limited as they ramp him up off this hamstring issue, you would go to Doubs, but I do believe a lot more in the talent of Watson. Watson is also cheaper, so I'm going to put Watson in here as our last expensive guy, and then let's see what we can do with the rest of this lineup, because it does feel like you have to choose one of Adams and Jacobs, or we have to flip Watson and play him at captain, and I'm just not sure there's enough upside for Christian Watson at captain if he is not going to see 50 snaps, 40 routes. Like, I just don't know how he gets there necessarily. So that's a bit of a risk point that we could talk about as we go with Christian Watson. Shout out Sammy here. Good morning. Sending love for the War Pig Nation. A nation of War Pigs is all I've ever wanted on my side. Appreciate Sammy and, of course, all you guys hanging out with live, as well as everybody who watches after the fact. I appreciate that as we go through this hand build process. Who else can we look at here? Jaden Reed snap count was down a little bit last game with Christian Watson. Also, one thing to note, Luke Musgrave is going today, at least unless something changes last minute. He was a full go in practice for the last 3 days, so it does seem like Luke Musgrave is going. It is a not bad tight end matchup going against the Raiders. They're weakest against the slot, give them a 0.42 EPA to target there, but also 0.31 EPA per target allowed to tight ends, 0.13 allowed out wide. Point being, this is a Raiders defense that you can tack from pretty much any position. So talk yourself to whatever player you want, but I think it's important to note Musgrave had the concussion last Thursday night. It was then a 10-day window to get him in, and he can play Monday night. So now we know that you need probably at least 10 days for a guy coming off a concussion who leaves a game to get into an NFL game, something we've been tracking throughout the year just to keep the projections moving in the right direction. Wicks is pretty thin if you do expect Watson to come up a little bit more, but let's look at the price tag for Wicks. I mean, certainly possibly he's getting enough work, somehow averaging 5 fantasy points per game. All right, let's see. Mathology is the king of the pillow talk above expectation rankings out there. So maybe that is a take that who's Dontavian Wicks dating? Mathology knows, I'm sure, on some level. So we'll put him in here. We'll load 5,500 on the table. We can get to Musgrave. That'll probably be pretty chalky. We already have a double stack with Love here. We've got the best parts of the Raiders here. Can we go down a little bit more? Is A.J. Dillon going to be useful? You'd expect Aaron Jones to get more work in this spot. Again, not a bad rushing matchup, but not a great one going against the Raiders, giving up the negative 0.04 EPA per rush. Aaron Jones, though, was not very involved last time out. Did seem got more involved in the second half when the game was out of hand, but just was not a good usage for him that first half, where it made you feel like perhaps they were saving him up for more important games or games that are more live to win. This one should be more live to win. But Aaron Jones at $10,000. I mean, A.J. Dillon's at $4,600 on the slate. That is a gigantic difference. Yeah, Jones is the highest priced player. That's crazy. So I guess A.J. Dillon makes some amount of sense. I don't know that you have to have a Packers running back. You certainly, I think I'd prefer Aaron Jones by a wide margin with this build. Dillon does make some sense. Packers D could also make some sense. A kicker, maybe that is something where the drives stall out. I'm going to go with the kicker here. We have 2 Carlsons going. We have Anders Carlson and Daniel Carlson going. Unclear if there's any relation here. If there is, I'm sure we're going to hear about it incessantly on Monday Night Football tonight. But let's leave $1,500 on the table, and let's go with Anders Carlson for Green Bay. And I presume that's who's actually kicking for him tonight. So the team I'm going to go with here, Jordan Love, Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs. Again, I do think if you just take one of these guys, it'll get you on a more unique path. But I do think there's potential for both guys to get there. Again, good rushing matchup. And Adams just beats every matchup, assuming that he is able to go today after having the Q tag on him. Christian Watson, who is still, I'm deeply in the bags for. Again, this is one of the things I struggle with best ball versus DFS slates, where I have so much Watson in best ball, it almost feels like don't play him in a showdown because you could get different maybe. Play Romeo Dobbs, who I have less of. But I do think Watson is a strong play. I do think in this kind of matchup, too, the Raiders struggle against deep balls, a 0.76 EPA allowed on passes of 20-plus air yards. They also struggle on short throws, 0.2 EPA there. They struggle in basically everything you can do. They're really bad versus man as well, which Christian Watson should be able to beat even more so. So I think, to me, that's why I'm going to Christian Watson here, but I do struggle with that, where I think sometimes you can just let your best ball bag stand. You don't have to keep chasing guys into the season, and Christian Watson is a guy that right now I am chasing into the season. We have Dontavian Wicks and then Anders Carlson rounding out the team. So this will be my single entry on the huddle. I think we've cashed like 4 in a row of these entries that we built here on stream. So that's feeling pretty good, but definitely tough to build out until we find the projections. So let's see what the Stokastic projections say. Let me refresh here. I thought we were good to go, and apparently I am now not logged in. So let's log in real fast. Don't steal my password, guys. You can see all these dots. Don't keep guessing around trying to figure out Spags' Stokastic password. All right, so let's get the projections here. Top projected players, Josh Jacobs looking number 1 overall, Devontae Adams number 2. The kickers are brothers. Okay, good to know. I mean, I guess it makes sense 2 Carlsons would kick and be brothers, but that was not one that was on my radar. Jordan Love number 3, Jimmy Garoppolo number 4, Aaron Jones number 5. Steep drop-off to Aaron Jones here. So he might be a more interesting tournament play now that we're looking at this, where you do have Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams at a pretty high price tag, Aaron Jones at a high price tag with a low projection relative to those guys. That is something that could make Aaron Jones more of a tournament play. It's not going to pop up in an optimizer, but we will see how that goes in a moment. Top value plays according to Stokastic data. Again, Dontavian Wicks, so he is the chalk one. The pivot point would be a Michael Mayer, who is absolutely destroying my best ball teams with his non-effort so far, basically putting up zeros and 1 2-point conversion has been Michael Mayer, but he does project okay here with a 9.5 value projection. Trey Tucker, Austin Hooper. Austin Hooper's role a little more solid, but he also doesn't get targeted very much either. He's getting targeted, let's see, 1.3 times per game. Good for a 3.6% intended touch rate for Austin Hooper. Great EPA for Austin Hooper, 0.6 EPA on his plays, which would actually be better than Davante Adams. But when you're only getting 1 target per game, that's pretty tough. But does seem like Hooper comes in here. $600 price tag, not that bad either. This is not a screaming tight end matchup. I played one showdown lineup last night. It was a screaming tight end matchup against Dallas. Dallas has been getting killed by tight end. Played George Kittle at captain. This is not one that I would force in a tight end captain on this side. I think if you were going to force in a tight end captain, I think it'd be Luke Musgrave on the Packers side. But just something to keep in mind there. Hooper, DeAndre Carter, that rounds out your top 5. Nobody too sexy here as value plays. Kyle Juszczyk, great value play last night. No pillow talk for Wicks, just Stoneman and seeing roughly 62% of snaps. Again, I do think that comes down if Watson's goes up. Reed, too, I felt like it was weird that his snaps went down because of Watson being back in. Like Wicks, to me, is just not as good as those guys, but I think at $200, I get it. But if he's going to be the biggest value play, I'm pretty sure he's going to come up a lot in an optimizer. We'll find out in a moment. Top owned plays according to Stokastic. Josh Jacobs, number 1, 65% overall, 17% at captain. Worth pointing out, a Josh Jacobs captain lineup doesn't really do much to cut your parlay in terms of guessing what you have right. So if you do play Davante Adams at captain, at least you know there's a shot that Jimmy Garoppolo makes that lineup, gives you a better read on the game flow. You play Jimmy Garoppolo at captain, Jordan Love at captain, you know you have to put 1 or 2 pass catches with them, probably 2 for both those guys. So that's something that tells you a different tale, whereas Josh Jacobs, it could just be like a random slot generator with Josh Jacobs at captain because nothing correlates with a running back at captain necessarily. Defense a little bit, but even that, not as much. Jordan Love is number 3, 51% ownership, only 9% at captain. Jimmy Garoppolo, 49% ownership, 8% at captain. Surprised to see that much Jimmy. Jacoby Myers, number 5 at 45% owned, 9% at captain. And then, let's see, the value plays or the completely unowned plays. Unknown guys, Dontavian Wicks at about 10%. Austin Hooper a little bit more. So these are guys you could put in just to immediately cut that ownership product. Amir Abdullah, Michael Mayer. Out of the guys that I would play out of this group, I guess DeGuara could play, but he really doesn't see snaps unless you see Musgrave go out. So DeGuara would be a guy that comes in if Musgrave suffers some concussion after effects, I guess. But I don't think DeGuara himself is that great of a play. The guys that I think that I would be willing to play the most would probably be Wicks, probably be Hooper, and Amir Abdullah does get enough pass game work. I think these 4 right here would be the ones that I feel the most comfort with. And Trey Tucker is a guy that maybe can break a big play, kind of like Kevontae Turpin did last night. Tucker is that guy, but it's just not a lot of faith that he can get there meaningfully. So he would be probably my 5th pick. But Hooper, Wicks, Amir Abdullah, Michael Mayer, I think those are the guys you really want to get to if you are going to try to cut the ownership product with somebody good. Brothers Carlson and the new brothers Grammatica. Zendejas brothers had 3 brothers all playing the NFL. I guess there is something to being a kicker and having your brother be a similarly good kicker. So that's the recruiting. That's the new ethos, the new meta game for recruiting kickers. Just find a brother of somebody and just say, hey, you got a good leg? We'll figure it out. Let's go to the showdown here on Fantasy Cruncher. We're going to use the projections from Stokastic. Why is it not loading? We'll find out in a moment. What is going on here? Okay, there we go. Make sure I'm copying these projections. We will paste them in and we'll see again what we do with these projections. It's not about necessarily trying to figure out, oh, this is exactly what the field's going to play. What this does is what it tells us is that these teams basically are going to be built using the exact math, like no sort of science to it, no sort of wiggle room, no brain play. If we're going to use that ethos that floats around on social media now, this is just raw numbers telling us who should appear in the lineups the most. And that doesn't necessarily mean, again, the field's going to play 100% of a guy. What it does mean, though, is that the math is going to push people towards playing more of that guy, either whether it be a captain, whether it be at flex, all of that. So Jacoby Myers coming up at 76% of lineups. So that's interesting to note. At captain, we are seeing 48% Josh Jacobs. And then also, let's see, are we getting 52% Josh Jacobs in every single lineup, 52% at flex, 48% at captain. Jimmy Garoppolo, well, let's not worry about him. Davante Adams in 36% of lineups at captain and in 64. So yes, Jacobs and Adams are in every single lineup together. So that puts you immediately on a chalkier build, whether one of them is at captain or not. Obviously, a way to decrease the ownership product a little bit would be to play one of them at captain, but you're not getting to a less chalky configuration really. So One rule you can make, again, if you're trying to go for the pure uncut way to win a showdown, especially if you're playing like 5 to 10 entries, would be max one of Devontae Adams or Josh Jacobs, because those are the two guys who are going to be in every single lineup. Jordan Love in 64% of lineups, including 4% in captain. So nobody else is in 100%. And Dontavian Wicks here is the value play that allows for you to jam some stuff in. He's coming up in 48% of these 25 lineups. Top stack. So we are seeing 5-1 Raiders builds coming up in 8 out of 25. So a 33% progression or projection inclination here to put the full onslaught for the Raiders. You're also seeing 4-man stacks. So 20 out of 25 lineups here that are just the raw math, just the projection data from Stokastic, are putting you on having at least 4 Raiders in a lineup. So that means that Packers onslaughts, that even Packers with 3-mans might be a little bit underrepresented. But I do think the 4-2 with a Packers lean, 5-1 with a Packers lean especially, is your way to get off the beaten path tonight. And I really think I could support that one. Like a 4-2 Packers build where the 2 that you have from the Raiders are Adams and Jacobs. It's definitely one way to cut the ownership right away while still getting in the best plays. So I think that stands out to me immediately. And then any kicker combos. Kickers, only Anders Carlson coming up. No Daniel Carlson. So kickers not heavily featured here. That tends to mean that they're better tournament plays. When they're highly projected, that means they end up in every single lineup. That can usually make them a little bit over-owned, a little bit overplayed relative to what a kicker's upside is. So just something to keep in mind here, that Daniel Carlson not coming up at all. So that's the thing. I guess the 2 takeaways right away from this one. We'll do our 3 concrete takeaways at the end. But 2 takeaways from the projections would be not enough 4-2 Packers, not enough 5-1 Packers. And then in these 4-2 Raiders builds and 5-1 Raiders builds, you're not getting the kicker in very often, which I think is a weird sign too, because I imagine there's a lot of Raiders drives that could stall out. If they're moving the ball, like they're not a fantastic red zone team, they're going to stall out sometimes. So I do think going to them would be pretty good. And then go to Carlson rather in particular would be really good. And the defense is not coming up very much either. So you can play some defenses and you're not going to be too chalky overall. Jacoby Myers percentage. Myers was coming up in a lot of these. Hold on. 76% overall in the flex, not much at captain. So the way to immediately flip Myers would be to play him at captain. I don't know that he's the greatest captain play in the world, but he's certainly a viable captain play. And Cody at ETR has 4 Green Bay, 2 Las Vegas at a 34% utilization. I think it'd be a little bit lower than that, but that's probably right. Again, these aren't exact 1-to-1s here with the projections, but I would think that 5-1 Raiders, 4-2 Raiders, 3-3 would also be a lot higher utilization. I'm surprised to see 34% for 4 Green Bay. All right, let's go to the simulator. We'll go with this one here. Of course, Green Bay, Las Vegas. What it's going to do is build 10,000 lineups, simulate them against each other 40,000 times. We'll find out which ones rank the best here. While we wait for this to load, guys, please do subscribe down below. Please hit the like button. Please leave a comment. Of course, Splash Play here, 5 days a week of streams at 11 a.m., varying in lengths, but Mondays and Thursdays, I do the showdown, this exact process, building lineups, trying to show you guys what the best data and the best tools are showing out there. So please support the channel here as we march to 3K subs. And of course, hit the join button down below, $4.99 a month. You get my weekly data sheet that I accidentally gave out to everybody for free this week. You will get it for yourself if you go to hit that join button down below. All right. Here's the pool of lineups here. Some difference between the actual ownership, but let's just go with it as it is. We're going to simulate these. I believe it's, again, 33% to first, something like that for the Million Maker. So we'll put 30% here. If you wanted to upload your own projections, you would say use custom projections, download the template, and then put in whatever projections you want. Just keep that in mind if you are using the Stokastic sim. And then let's see. All right, move out of the way. Prompt. There we go. I will also say I am playing with SaberSim. I have a 5-day trial going for SaberSim as well. I just kind of want to see what the differences between the 2 products are, because there is a little bit of a lack of customization with the Stokastic sims that I find kind of frustrating. The ability to manage exposures. You basically, to me, have to export your sims and then go through Excel and have another sorting process, which does make it a little bit tough for me. You could also play them straight away. If you did, you would have landed on some good plays. But the issue is that if you play these lineups straight away, especially for a main slate, you're going to get a high concentration of value guys. You're going to get a high concentration of guys that the sims really think are good. And as a result, you might end up just overexposed to some guys that you're like, I don't feel that great about Khalif Raymond, but the sims say that we should go here. So that's something just to note here as part of my process that I want to be completely candid about. Top ROI lineup so far looks like Josh Jacobs, A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones. So both Green Bay running backs, Daniel Carlson, Jordan Love, Luke Musgrave. I don't know that I love playing both running backs, but I guess you could see it with the usage there. If Jordan Love moves the ball into the red zone, the running backs punch in some touchdowns. That could be how they get there. But that is your highest ROI lineup, which feels kind of gross. Overall metrics, And the top cash game lineup, if you are a sicko playing Showdown cash, this looks like the best one. 40.3% cash rate. Devontae Adams, Anders Carlson, Hunter Renfrow, Jacoby Myers, Jimmy Garoppolo, Josh Jacobs. Unfortunately, you're not getting both Carlson bros, but you are getting at least one of them in the cash game lineup. The top 150 with the exposures here. Simulated ROI, that's the highest, is going to be Dontavian Wicks. So our guy Mathology wins the prize here for highest ROI player. Luke Musgrave, number 2 at captain. So again, I think that's a really interesting play. Volume's not great for him, but he's not going to be that owned, projected for just 3.6% owned. It is a not tough matchup going against tight end here. Again, 0.31 EPA to tight ends allowed by this Raiders D. Musgrave gets his targets downfield, increased snap share for Christian Watson. Romeo Doubs putting a good game on tape last week. Maybe you see the pressure kind of come forwards, and that could open things up for Musgrave. Definitely a possibility here for Musgrave. So I'll have some Musgrave captain tonight, absolutely. And I think he's a very strong play here for him to have a positive ROI as a captain. And then the last positive ROI guy is going to be Austin Hooper. So the 2 value plays the Sims would push you towards would be Dontavian Wicks, Austin Hooper, as those guys being the best. That said, they're not putting him in a ton of lineups, only 21% lineups with Wicks, 18% with Austin Hooper. So keep that in mind. Let's see. Anything else interesting here? Who's the highest leverage guy that's trying to push you the most towards Josh Jacobs' leverage at captain, so it does not care about the correlation there. Jacobs' captain looks like the play that the Sims would advocate for the most. Still not a positive ROI, but it does feel like a Jacobs lineup gets you the construction. It's going to give you a chance to win a tournament the most frequently. Musgrave at the flex, also coming up with a lot of leverage. Wicks at the flex, coming up with a lot of leverage. And then Jordan Love at the flex. More flex play for Love than captain, so I guess I'm a little bit off the beaten path with my pick there, but that's sort of how that's looking. Anything else? Any lineups, chat, that you guys want to see in particular? Let's look at Musgrave captain ones. Musgrave, Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams, Dontavian Wicks, Jordan Love, Josh Jacobs. That one's pretty good, not leaving a lot of salary on the table, so maybe that's the one risk. This could be a chalkier Musgrave lineup. Let's see if we could find a less chalky one. Starts with... If you want to find lineups sorted by captain, this is one way to do it on the Stokastic Sim. You can start with starts with in your filtering, and it'll give you the guy at captain. So we're getting all the ones that start with Luke Musgrave in this text here. Musgrave, A.J. Dillon, Jacoby Myers, Garoppolo, Jordan Love, Josh Jacobs. This one would strike me as unique because you are only getting in one of Adams or Jacobs. You're also getting direct leverage against Adams, Jacoby Myers, so that's kind of interesting too. Definitely, A.J. Dillon, we talked about, not the sexiest play. Aaron Jones, unequivocally a better player. But Musgrave here, I think, looks pretty interesting in this build. You show SaberSim on Thursday. I'm not paying for it, so no. Cannot. It's $300 a month, and frankly, with how much money I have to spend on Probably's costs right now, I'm not likely to renew unless we have a big takedown tonight. So unfortunately, cannot show SaberSim on stream right now. But check it out. It's a free 5-day trial. I would honestly recommend just giving a shot. Stokastic, I think, a good product too. They are different though. SaberSim feels very daunting at first. But you do kind of hop in there, and once you figure it out, watch one of their videos. I think it does help you out a little bit more. But what the main thing SaberSim offers as a contrast is like you can really get unique with your lineups because you can actually set the amount of uniques in the export. So what you could do basically is like go through, if you're building, as I was over the weekend, building 220 lineups. What I did then was set it to the uniques basically would be like what's the max amount of uniques you can get while still being able to get the amount of lineups you want. So I had 5 uniques per lineup yesterday, and it allowed me to get pretty good spread. The downside was that I had a lot of lineups that did not cash, but then I had ones in every single tournament that were in the top 500. So I think that's the power of SaberSim, is just figuring out, how to manage the exposures a little bit more, how to get yourself different while still making quality lineups. On Stokastic, you kind of have to just like lean in on the best plays fully, or what the sim perceives the best plays. And I think if you are, if you're not willing to lose $1,000 a week in bankroll, let's say you're playing 1,200 to 1,500 or whatever, you could do the same math for yourself no matter what you're playing. I think with the Stokastic Sims, you're set up really well to win if everything aligns perfectly. When everything doesn't align perfectly, you're setting yourself up to get drubbed. So if you can afford that, you're giving yourself the best upside with Stokastic. If you have a more reasonable bankroll and you just want to see a spread of lineups with a few that have a chance to break out, I think SaberSim gives you a better shot at that because it's not forcing you just in the best sim plays. And I think that's sort of the thing that I do find appealing. So check it out. 5-day trial for SaberSim. Give him the free ad. I gave it a shot after listening to the guy on Lowell's. I'll talk about it, of course, with our pal Pete Overzet and Brick. And I thought it was worthwhile checking out the products, as you should for yourself. Try everything. That's what I would advocate for. But don't keep changing your process all the time. But I think for, take a few weeks with one product, take a few weeks with another, and try to keep everything that's going into those products the same. And I think that's what I would advocate for. So But check out SaberSim 5-day trial. All right. 3 takeaways, unless anybody wants to see any more lineups, which I don't think. Let me see if there's anybody else unique that's worth putting in here. Let's look at a Christian Watson captain lineup just for prosperity's sake, because I still believe. I will continue to believe until look, Pickens came through, right? Watson's the exact same fucking player based on the things I look at. So got to be time for Christian Watson. Best Christian Watson lineup here. Watson, Hunter Renfrow, Jaden Reed, Jimmy Garoppolo, Jordan Love, Josh Jacobs. I like this one because you are getting completely off the beaten path of the running backs for Green Bay. You're also getting only one of Josh Jacobs or Devontae Adams. That will cut your ownership product quite a bit. And then you are getting unique with Hunter Renfrow. Hunter Renfrow is about 11% owned. I don't love him as a player, but I do think if he somehow got there, it would hurt Devontae Adams getting there, would hurt Jacoby Myers getting there. So that build makes sense. Any of these, though, you could take, and I wouldn't feel that bad about. Just keep in mind, again, Adams and Jacobs in the same lineup. I think it's going to make you more likely to be chalky overall. So just keep that in mind in terms of decreasing the ownership product in some other way, whether that be a low-owned captain, whether that be an under 15% owned guy. You have to have that if you're going to play Adams and Jacobs together, no matter what configuration. All right, 3 takeaways to wrap us up here. My 3 takeaways are going to be, if you are building just a certain amount of lineups, max 1 of Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams. Those guys are the best plays in the slate. That said, the projections are going to force people to get these lineups together, get these guys in the lineups together almost every single time. So right away, if I were going to put in 5 lineups tonight, and I could tell you I'm putting in, I think, 20 in the $20 entry, you might put in a little bit more. Point being, though, I will have some share that is only 1 of Jacobs and 1 of Adams. Obviously, those guys are great plays. They're great players, assuming that Adams is a full go. But if you just fade one of them, that's one way to immediately cut down the field that you're going against. Number 2 would be being willing to play more defenses and kickers. It's surprising to me that we're seeing in the projections as many 5-1s for Vegas, as many 4-2s for Vegas. Some of the 4-2 utilization for Green Bay that Mathology mentioned being in ETR's data. Like, that's something too, where if you have a lot of side of a team, usually that means you're getting at least 1 defense and kicker in. And because these defenses and kickers are not projecting spectacularly, they're not enough lineups. So I think just throwing in a defense and kicker, another way to cut the ownership product a lot more than you normally would on a Monday night island game kind of slate. My 3rd takeaway here that I would try to build around, I think it's just leaning in on the Packers pass game. I know that, we'll see what the data has. Again, ETR, I'll check that data later today. Point being, though, like, I just don't think that people are going to overstack Green Bay here because they're trying to get to Devontae Adams, because they're trying to get to Josh Jacobs. I think they're going to push those guys to captain more. And I really do believe that there is a slate-breaking upside for both Jordan Love, who can run for a touchdown and throw for 3. He attacks downfield. He has some real downsides to how he handles pressure. But I do think that Jordan Love, to me, a viable captain, viable in the flex, viable with one of his pass catchers at captain. I think, to me, those builds will be the most appealing tonight. They'll be the ones that I try to put in the biggest entries, the biggest tournaments out there. That's going to be my approach. So there we go, guys. I think that covers up the slate pretty well. We'll be back tomorrow doing the best ball review show. But of course, on Thursday as well, Thursday Night Football, we'll be doing the same process again for Thursday night. Follow me at Chris Spags. Follow the show at Splash Play Pod. Of course, go check out. I'm always pointing. There we go. Go check out probably.com. Go get in some bets tonight. Great way to go explore the data on a game as well. Just go on our Explore page, search Packers, and you'll find all the bets from tonight's game, along with the top probabilities from around the world. And basically, it'll tell you then how the game flow is supposed to go. Like right now, the top 5 most probable events. I'm not going to show it on screen because it's going to take too much time. But over 19.5 first half total points, 62% probability. Over 42 is a 61% probability. Jaden Reed under 3.5 player receptions, 60% probability. Over 20 in the first half, 59% probability. All these props are pushing you towards maybe saying this game is a little more scoring early on. That could potentially portend a shootout. That's the kind of data you get from Probably, even if you don't place a bet. So go check it out at probably.com. That's my baby. We continue to work on it, continue to bleed money on it every single day. But there we go. Follow me at Chris Spags. Follow the show at Splash Play Pod. Come back tomorrow. We'll talk some best ball. We'll talk some recap. We'll do all that stuff. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. And of course, we'll see you guys again soon. Enjoy your days. Good luck. Bye.